Dr. Frank Hayden, if we can pass the mic. Yes, wow, unbelievable. If you don't mind, Dr. Hayden, I'm going to just read a couple things here, okay? In 1968, organized the first Special Olympics with the Kennedy Foundation. I know Jamie Soleil and Katrina LeMay don't do a lot with Special Olympics, and they're here. You actually had the Special Olympics Incorporated. You were the executive director of the Special Olympics from 1968 to 72. Just elbow me if I'm getting something wrong here, I can take it. You founded and led the Office of the European Affairs and Special Olympics International. You're a special consultant for the Canadian group from 1994 to 2000, and I'm sure you're still doing stuff now. So, Order of Canada recipient, Queen's Diamond Jubilee, and you have a school named after you in Burlington. So that's pretty impressive. Yeah. You look back to that first goal. I think the Special Olympics has come a long way, and it's beaten a lot of maybe stereotypes that happened back in the early days for sure, and just the enormous project in front of you in 1968 and probably even years before that. How you look at the leaders in this room and just how did you get that to look a little bit smaller so that you could accomplish what you did?
Well, I guess by breaking it up in pieces like any large task. But before I answer, I was a citizenship judge at one time, Mike, in another life. And if you had come to me, I'd have made you a citizen a long time ago. In Soldier Field in '68 with the first games, I was the only guy in town that realized that it wasn't just a fun day and a one-off, that I was just starting on something. It was fully my intention to launch it there and then spread it across the United States. So it wasn't all that difficult. Actually, it only took me 2 years. In 2 years, I had state organizations and annual state games in every state of the union, and they all came to a second national games in Chicago in 1970. So when I did that, I figured, well, that's because those Americans, they're just sport crazy anyway, and anything you ask them to do in sport, they'll do. That's a wonderful thing about Americans. And even relating it to children with mental handicap. And also there's a great concern, just the same as here in Canada, for people who need help. People have difficulty that you can assist. And when you combine those two things, sport and assistance for people who need it, you got a winner everywhere. And because first across the United States and of course Canada, but later on, what I did, I took leave from McMaster for about 3.5 years, almost unasked, to take it around the world. The time had come. There are a lot of countries that knew about it through Peace Corps volunteers that took it down to South America or whatever, and they were looking for help, and they said, gee, we need somebody to do for us what you did for America. So in the end, I was away from MAC for 3.5 years, traveled the world with it, and found exactly the same thing. It wasn't that tough a sell. The world is filled with sports lovers just like you. It's filled with people who want to help like you as well. And so it's not that difficult. Occasionally there are problems, but the same thing. I cut the world up in pieces and did it a region at a time. That's why we have, 170 plus countries now.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Yeah. I know Mark Tewksbury was here earlier as well, and he's big into the Special Olympics, as so many of the athletes are, and why not? It is such a wonderful, I don't even want to say cause, it's just a wonderful movement, right? It really is a wonderful movement. And can you think of an athlete, a story of an athlete that you met along the way that really inspired you and just kind of gave you that extra sense of, I'm just doing the right thing here?
Well, I think originally, I'll talk about 2 athletes if I can.
Oh, you can talk about 4 if you'd like.
One American and one Canadian. In 1968, Rayford Johnson, who had won the Olympic decathlon in Rome in 1960, silver medal in decathlon in '64 in Tokyo, he came to Chicago to help with those games, to publicize it. He was our first really celebrity athlete, a wonderful human being, and probably the most respected black athlete in America. We were staying at a hotel called the LaSalle, which has since burned down in Chicago, and I didn't find out until about a week before the games that it was owned by Avery Brundage, president of the International Olympic Committee, who is noted as a rough, tough guy, and people had a lot of difficulty with him. But Chicago people told me they had some troubles, and could I help them? I said, what do you want? And they said, well, if we could have a dinner at the hotel, you know, it was about 1,500 people. So I wrote a letter to Avery Brundage and said, you know, your great interest in youth and sport, we'd like to invite you as a guest to our games and opening ceremonies. Oh, and by the way, we're staying at your hotel. We'd like a dinner if you can give it to us. He was in Japan, and then he came back, and I got a call to come up to his office. And I got treated like a schoolboy. I stood in front of his desk waiting for him to lift his head. He said, you Hayden? And I said, well, yes, Mr. Brundage. He says, we can't give you a dinner. And I said, well, I'm sorry. I just thought I'd ask. And I started to back out the door, and he said, but the Brundage Foundation can. And the neat thing was, the next day, I got another call from his secretary that said, Mr. Brundage understands that you have Mr. Rayford Johnson staying there. And I said, that's right. He's out right now on some promotion things for us. He said, Mr. Brundage wants to know if Mr. Johnson would come up and talk with him. And I said, well, I can't speak for him, but I'll ask him when he comes back. I knew why Brundage wanted to see him. I don't know if you remember, '68, the Olympic Games were in Mexico City. And at that time was really height of civil rights in the United States, and especially the rights of black people. And at that time, the black athletes in America were starting to revolt about how they were being treated, and the word had gone out that they were on the verge of boycotting the Mexico City Olympics. If the black athletes had boycotted those Olympics, what do you think they would have been without them? Eh? And so that's what he swear. I didn't know where Rayford stood on the whole thing, but when I came back, I asked him if he would go up, and he said yes. Sure. So I put on shirt and tie as well and went up with him, and they talked for a couple of minutes, and then Brundage asked him if we would help him with the problem. He says, you know what our problem? And I'm saying, Rayford, say yes. You know, I got a dinner riding on this thing. I could lose it. And he did. Now, exactly what Rayford did for him, I don't know. But I saw Rayford, hadn't seen him for years. I saw him this last summer at Los Angeles at the World Special Olympic Summer Games in LA, and it was a great reunion. And I reminded him of those days, and we both had a laugh about it.
You're 24 years young, right? Little wink here. You and I got this down pat. 24 years young. I mean, what does this mean to you? The Canada Sports Hall of Fame, your induction.
Oh, I didn't know what this hall. This is my first time to come in the hall, you know, today, and I'm overwhelmed by the place, just like all of the people that come here for the first time. And my first thought is, as a Canadian, God, I'm proud of this place, you know, and. But then I heard that it's not just a building and a facility, and I heard about the programs that come out of here. And I saw the school kids in here today as well, and I heard about the outreach on the internet, that it isn't just a place to honor people and put up artifacts from the past, but it really is a place for protecting our sport heritage and developing it and passing it down to young people. I think that all Canadians should be very proud of what happens here, and for me to be part of it makes it extra special for me, I'll tell you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Frank Hayden.